We are back. It's the Joe Holka Show presented by Line Movement. Week 16 main slate stacks plus lineup builder. Obviously, we do have Ryan Hodge with us. It's been so long since I talked to Ryan Hodge. It's actually been about 30 seconds for anyone watching this on the live stream. We just went through the Saturday slate, kind of built a lineup, talked through one of our favorite stacks for that. So now it's the main slate. People are getting catch-up mode right now, Hodge, because they just got through, I guess, something they've probably been focused on for most of the week. And then here we go. It's Sunday, right? So the holidays, always an interesting week overall to kind of get through your process a little bit quicker than normal. So what were your overall thoughts about just how to attack these type of weeks where it feels like a split slate? Do you think most people feel a little bit uncomfortable, maybe a little bit behind in research, or do you think that that's just me being a crybaby, I guess?
No, dude, I absolutely think even for people who aren't creating content and don't have, tight schedules and have to get X, Y, and Z out, they're absolutely behind. And let's also not forget that the NBA 13 game slate starts tonight on Wednesday, or
Yep.
if this is a Thursday, or there's the Christmas Day slate, there's so much. We have a 3 game Saturday slate. So I think people are tackling it one day at a time rather than working on their Saturday 14 game slate, figuring out ownership on a Tuesday like most people would, right? So I think a lot of people are getting a little bit of a taste of my world or your world, where sometimes we're, like I don't work on these Sunday slates until like Saturday night unless I'm coming on the show and giving the people the goods.
Yeah, man, answers to the test. People want them. So if you feel behind right now, definitely check out this video. I'm going to drop it right here. This is either going to be the Reeves video where we walk through the top 3 games on the main slate. Maybe we'll give you guys the wide receiver sleepers video there with Matt Harmon. So Hodge, this is I was very happy to see that this was one of your favorite stacks, because this is a game that I'm pretty focused on. We saw what Jalen Hurts was able to do last week. They still haven't gotten super aggressive with the pricing, but this Philadelphia and Dallas game definitely stands out on a slate where I think a lot of people are going to be very heavy on Kansas City and on Atlanta. Just kind of similar to the Saturday slate. We have one game above the rest. It just has a much higher over-under, but if we just go down to the second highest over-under on the slate, Philly at Dallas, 49.5 point over-under, only a 2-point favorite for the Eagles on the road in this spot. So hopefully we get a little bit of back and forth, but it sounds like you're a Hurts believer at the very least at this point, right?
Absolutely. We mentioned it in the Saturday game, and we've probably mentioned it in every stacks video that we've done, but I want volume, I want plays, I want quick pace of game. And if you look at Philadelphia, they've been a little bit slow, but we've seen them keep pace with teams, right? So when Hurts had to come in and play against the Saints, we saw them keep pace, and we saw them kind of play to their opponent. And then once again with Arizona last week. So this week with Dallas, they're second in total plays per game in a situation neutral pace. And I think we are going to once again get an extremely paced up game here, obviously indicated by the total. And like we said last week, two teams they both have healthy implied team totals, right? So we've got Dallas sitting just below, just shy of 24 points. And then we have the Eagles, who are sitting just shy of 26 points for an implied team total. So should be a competitive game, and that's what we want. Both teams just keeping their foot on the gas. And I think Hurts is like the 5th or 6th most expensive quarterback on DraftKings on this slate. I could be a little bit wrong there.
7K. So if we're just looking, we got Mahomes, Lamar, Deshaun Watson, Herbert, Wilson ahead of him. So man, like you can make an argument that Hurts could be like a top 3 guy again this week. So I love the call, man. I guess it's a little bit shaky in terms of who to actually pair him with. I know we've been doing a lot of skinny stacks and all that, but let's preface this. This is going to be, let's say this is a large field contest, so that we did a smaller field lineup build for the Saturday slate. Let's say that this one is a larger field team. So Jalen Hurts, who are you stacking him with?
Probably nobody.
Probably no one. Love it.
No,
Okay.
I would go with Goddard, actually. I think especially if you factor in the extra catch and touchdown with like 2 minutes left in that game, that just won't show up in the stat sheet and won't show up in the game logs as people are taking a look. Goddard was in for a much better day. He saw the most targets out of everyone. I think Alshon ran the most routes out of any wide receiver, and I think Ward will be the most popular
those
because he
touchdowns,
ended up catching 2 touchdowns, right? So for me, I'm just going to go right back to Goddard. Unfortunately, now ownership for me at this point is I don't have a good read on it, because a big part of it is just what is the rest of the industry doing and how are they feeding content to people. However, what I've already done is I'll run about 2,500 lineups with just variance in my very foundational projections. And I have Dallas Goddard as the 4th highest owned player, let alone tight end. And so I think he's going to be chalk. I think we could see like Kelsey and Brian Hill and some other guys start to sneak up into like the top 5 of total overall ownership as the slate comes a little bit more into form. But I do think it's Goddard. I think it's Goddard at the tight end position.
You know what I like about the Goddard play here? Because I think people are going to play Miles Sanders this week. So just looking at like the early ownership, I think Miles Sanders is going to be relatively popular on a very, very gross running back slate overall. So I kind of think that this might end up being a little bit more unique than you're originally thinking. So on the other side, I think Amari Cooper at 5,700 is interesting. If Darius Slay is out, he's someone that has been pretty, I guess, if there is a tougher shadow matchup, he is one of those guys where it seems like it's mattered a little bit. I still think that Michael Gallup has left a lot on the field. We've seen him kind of lead that team in air yards over the last 3 or 4 weeks. So I think that he's interesting. Looks like Ezekiel Elliott was on a limited basis on Wednesday, again with that calf injury. So maybe Tony Pollard is a direct leverage play off of Miles Sanders. Do you have a favorite Dallas bring back on this one?
Yeah, he was #1 wide receiver in my model last week, and he's the #3 wide receiver in my model this week, and it's Michael Gallup.
I already put him in there. I knew who you were talking about. So we talked about both those guys last week. It's funny that Lamb got there on like basically like what was that? The return of the onside kick. So both of them got there somehow. But love the Gallup call again. Is he banged up? Reeves brought this up. He's got a hip pointer apparently, but he was a limited participant on Wednesday, so I'm sure he's going to be just fine. So do we want to keep it skinny like this, or do we want to add another Dallas guy to the other side?
No, I think when we're trying to be perfect, this is how we be perfect, right? I think Gallup has to net a lot of the targets as well as just consume at least one of the probably 3 to 4 TDs that Dallas ends up scoring here. So we're really hoping for 2 touchdowns out of Gallup to truly be perfect and have the nuts, because these large field 20K plus, they're lotteries, man. So we have to have the nuts.
Like it. So just looking at some of the early chalk of the week, Montgomery, Bell, Tyreek Hill, Austin Eckler, both looking like 15+% there. Do we have any interest in the Le'Veon Bell chalk at 5,800? It feels like the Fournette play in a lot of ways, which is never a lot of fun. But if the volume's there, high total, obviously that game just lapping a lot of these other games in terms of the over/under. So do we have any Le'Veon Bell interest at 5,800?
To a certain extent, I do, just because of the price. The running backs are just so gross on this slate.
Yep.
So I think Bell is fine from like a projection standpoint. He projects like at like 14 DraftKings points from me, and it's just like, I don't know, man. I think I'd rather play like Giovanni Bernard.
I've got him for less. Yeah, I've got him for like 12. Yeah. So like I'm fine with the Le'Veon fade, if I'm being completely honest. Gio,
but it's also Atlanta, you know.
So right? Yeah, that's true. That's true.
It's definitely a tough one, but I think we should fade him in this one. I think we can eat some chalk, you know, somewhere else for sure.
Okay. Let's just throw a placeholder defense in there for now so we can get a better idea of what we have going forward. So we could go Houston at 2,800 against Cincy. We could go Dallas against Philly. We're not doing that with Hurts. We could go Denver against the Chargers. Not sure how I feel about that one. The Cincinnati defense against Houston, I think, is kind of interesting with how basically like Deshaun Watson will take sacks. The Cincinnati defense, at least last week against Pittsburgh, pressuring a ton. So I kind of like Cincy. You in on that one?
Is Deshaun still the leading sack leader? Has he taken the most sacks out of any quarterback?
It feels like Wentz, it, but I'm gonna double check it here. Over the last,
I think Wentz might have been there.
Yeah. Why am I struggling to find this? There it is. Sack percent. I mean, if you take Ryan Finley out of it, Daniel Jones is up there as well. Daniel Jones, Sam Darnold, actually a higher percentage this year. But I mean, Deshaun Watson, very, very, I mean, he's way up at the top anyway. So let's go Cincy for now.
I'm good with that.
You mentioned Gio. I didn't even look at Gio's price, I'm being honest. I'm going to take a peek of it here.
Sub 5K, 4,800.
I like
I
that.
haven't decided if that's recency bias from the game that we all just saw where he got there against Pittsburgh, or if it's like, well, I mean, Gio was getting work early in the season, even with Joe Mixon. He rates well in my model. I think he rates at like a 68.5, which is a pretty decent model rating for a guy like Giovanni Bernard. And the matchup is fantastic against Houston.
Wow,
So
he is 4,800 for a guy that gets cut 25 attempts in that game. It's actually like one of his worst games of the year in terms of target share through the air, but that's where he scored one of those touchdowns, obviously. So I like the Geo call. So I'm in on that. So we're piecing this thing together a little bit. We're not too chalky yet. We've already kind of committed to a Le'Veon fade, so we got a little bit of salary to work with. So at the top end of kind of if we did want to pay up for anyone, do we want to try and get a Chief in here? I guess we talked about Tyreek a little bit last week when we were jamming together that Stars and Scrubs lineup. Another kind of similar spot, like New Orleans is one of those teams that can be beat over the top. I guess my concern is, like, yes, Atlanta's kind of similar, right? They can be beat over the top as well. We talked about that with Reeves. But we kind of saw New Orleans just be totally fine, like sticking two safeties deep, just letting them just like eat underneath. So do you think that like Atlanta sees what worked in some ways with what New Orleans did last week? Do you think there's a chance that they try and like implement that as well? I guess that's my only concern with Tyreek Hill at 9K.
Can I tell you that that's too much of a hand in the dirt take, and we
That
should
could
just
be.
trust the math?
Well, how's this for hand in the dirt? I guess he has a hamstring injury that he's battling through, so maybe that is what really matters.
That's different, and I think that's totally different. For me, the number one wide receiver in this game is Calvin Ridley.
Love it. Love it.
That offense flows through him when Julio Jones is not on the field. And even when Julio is on the field in some sort of a limited capacity, it makes no difference. In fact, I don't know, somebody check the RotoViz splits, or if you guys have a line movement, at line movement, if you guys have a splits app, like I wouldn't be surprised if Calvin plays just as well, if not better, but that's probably very noisy to look for.
I love the Ridley call, especially if we're fading some of these other Kansas City guys. So let's jam him in there for now. Is there like, who do you think leverages how do you leverage Kansas City in this spot? I guess we've already got Goddard and tight end taken care of. I'm a little bit spooked that Tyreek didn't practice with that hamstring injury. So I'm just looking in general. Do you want to take a chance on one of these like super thick, like a Mecole Hardman or someone like that at a super cheap price point?
I mean, if the question is how do you leverage, it's with one of those guys, right? It's the only way is that he catches 4 and one of them happens to be 65 in a TD. That's how they get there. The probability of that happening is very low. It happens maybe twice a year, maybe, whether it's Mecole or DeMarcus, one of them might get there. But I think that's the leverage. It's cheap. It allows us to play Calvin Ridley and another expensive running back. The better leverage though might be off of like Montgomery, and you play Allen Robinson.
I was just going to say, like, we're at a point now to where we don't really need that Hardman salary. So, like, I mean, we could literally just jam in Montgomery and still have all the salary in the world. So I guess we might have to upgrade one of these spots eventually. Sounds like would you rather be off of Montgomery and just jam in Allen Robinson to the flex and figure out the running backs?
I was more adjusting from like a game theory standpoint of like a real leverage spot of, I think Montgomery at the running back position carries more ownership. And so if we really want to leverage that, we play Allen Robinson or something along those lines. I really would like to get Austin Eckler against Denver into our lineup. And that's a place that I'm okay spending some money at. Coming off a little bit of a letdown game after we've seen a couple games of massive usage, I just think it's a really good spot where he might garner like 15 to 18% ownership. And dude, that is perfect for these large field lineups. Like I love those running backs that are in that spot.
So I love Robinson. I love Eckler. I think we don't have to force the Mecole Hardman on this one, just because we have so much salary. So we got 4,400. Let's just put A-Rob in the wide receiver slot, so we can keep our flex option open. So A-Rob, and let's see. Why can't I spell Allen Robinson? There we go. All right, so we got basically our options here, we could go super thin with one of these cheap running backs. We could go with basically any of these Denver pass catchers on the other side of Eckler, which I wouldn't mind doing. We could go like a Tim Patrick at 4,200. So I'm kind of in on that. Harmon's basically been in on Tim Patrick since the beginning, but he does really like him in this spot. He thinks that Judy's still just not right in that spot. So I wouldn't mind a Tim Patrick mini with Eckler. What do you think about that?
I think that's great.
All right. That's it, man. We did it. We made it through. I guess the two shortened stack / lineup builder videos. So if anyone's watching this for the first time, would love it if you consider subscribing to the channel, toss a like on this video. Make sure you follow my boy Ryan Hodge on Twitter. What else we got going on, Hodge? Anything you'd like to plug, my man?
You can check out the new Action Labs NBA product for all of those who are transitioning into NBA season. But other than that, no, run good. Don't be afraid to make pivots, and I think just stack these games where there's a lot of projected plays and you can't go wrong. Don't overthink it.
Good stuff, man. Have a great holiday, man. We'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, you too.